We now have the confirmed semifinals of the Concacaf champions after the quarterfinal matches. And here we have the 4 best teams of the Concacaf Confederation, the top 4 from this part of the continent. And we are going to analyze what happened in the quarterfinals. And of course, the matchups we will see in the stage before the grand final. So let's get settled in. We invite all of you to leave a like, to leave your comment, and to subscribe to the Falso Nueve TV channel so you don't miss any of our analysis, as well as the channel's live broadcast. So we invite you to smash that like button and let's get started with this new video, this new analysis, in this case about the confirmed semifinals of the Concacaf Champions, popularly called that, but officially known as the Concacaf Champions Cup. So let's get started with this analysis of what came out of these quarterfinal matchups. Let's get started. Let's go over how the bracket has been developing. What we need to talk about little by little is how the bracket has been coming together. How did the different clubs get to this point? So let's start by going over everything that has to do, of course, with some of the semifinalists. Because, for example, we have Nashville, we have Tigres, Toluca. So we're going to be going over, of course, everything related to this bracket, this CONCACAF Champions Cup bracket. Because we're going to talk first about what these quarterfinal matches have been like. We're going to talk about the quarterfinal matches, where Toluca, for example, has come out on top in a big way against Los Angeles Galaxy, which Toluca ended up eliminating. Then in another series where they advanced convincingly, we have Los Angeles Football Club, which ended up eliminating Cruz Azul. And then on the other side of the bracket, what I think has been the great match, even better than a great match, the great quarterfinal series, the duel between Nashville and America, with Nashville advancing, eliminating the Golden Eagles. And then, on the other hand, we have Tigres, who ended up in a very close series. I was going to say semifinal, but that's not the case. Lo cierto es que en una serie muy ajustada, Tigres ended up qualifying, eliminating Seattle Sounders in what was also a very close series, and they advanced to this new stage of the tournament. In this way, the semifinals will be played as follows. Toluca will face Los Angeles Football Club, while Nashville will face Tigres. We'll see if in the final we have a team from MLS and one from Liga MX, or if we have an all-Mexican final or an all-American final. In this way, we'll see how it all unfolds. We'll see how this stage of the CONCACAF Champions Cup develops. The road to the final. Because the truth is, we have some very exciting matches. And we have to mention something that's very important, especially considering how these matchups are going to be. And for example, Nashville is currently the best team in MLS. Hoy, la Concacaf Champions Cup has the best team in MLS, which often isn't the case with this tournament. Usually, the teams that make it to the decisive stages aren't the ones that are currently in the best form in their leagues, but in this case, they are. In this case, yes, Nashville is the best team in MLS, along with, for example, Vancouver Whitecaps. But the truth is that in the overall standings, both Vancouver and Nashville are two of the best teams in the US League. Meanwhile, for example, there's also a team like Los Angeles FC that is right up there. At the top of their conference, they're in 3rd place, but they have almost the same number of points as Nashville. I think Nashville has been earning more points lately based on their recent performance. I think I see them as a more solid team, especially considering how they performed last season, taking into account everything they've accomplished. And now what we need to talk about is the Mexican teams. We need to talk about the Mexican teams because right now we have 2 teams like Toluca and also Tigres who are not at the very top of Liga MX, but they are in the playoff spots. Many times we know that the playoff spot. Actually, the standings don't always match up with who will end up being the winners. The truth is that it doesn't end up being like that. The league standings don't always match up with who ends up winning, for example, the CONCACAF Champions Cup. But just like it usually happens with many competitions of this kind, of this nature, with these competitions where, for example, what needs to be said about these tournaments is that many times the moment a team is going through in the league doesn't end up being reflected in what happens in international competition. And it also doesn't mean that just because you finish first in the league and you start competing in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, it doesn't mean you'll end up being the champion. That's why we're going to start reviewing what this tournament has been so far, because we need to start talking about what it's been. For example, Toluca's path to the final, a path that Toluca has taken, for instance, where they first faced San Diego, and after San Diego, they eliminated the Los Angeles Galaxy team, and then on the Los Angeles side, yes, Los Angeles is a team that has made the complete journey from the first round, first facing Real Deportivo España in this initial phase, winning comfortably by a wide margin, 7-1, and then facing, of course, Alajuelense, the team from Costa Rica that ended up being eliminated in the round of 16. So that later, Los Angeles Football Club faces none other than Cruz Azul in the quarterfinal stage. And then, of course, to mention on the other side of the bracket, we have Nashville, who ended up eliminating Inter Miami first Inter Miami, and then another team ended up getting knocked out by none other than Nashville. Then Nashville faced Club America, and Club America ended up being eliminated by Nashville. On the other hand, Tigres, we have to talk about Tigres, who also started from the first round, first facing Forge from Canada, then against Cincinnati, in a series that ends 5-4 in favor of the University team. And to wrap up what has been this last series against Seattle Sounders, which ends with Tigres qualifying after eliminating Seattle Sounders, in what ends up being a knockout round. This way Tigres ends up securing a spot in the final. We also need to discuss this tournament, where Paulinho has been one of the championship's best players and top scorers. Of course, he has this competition in Toluca, with Paulinho as one of the top scorers. Another one who has been eliminated but has also been one of the top scorers is Gabriel Pech, a midfielder who currently plays for Los Angeles Galaxy. And then, if we have to talk about two of the forwards that the Los Angeles team has, for example, the Los Angeles team, like Dennis Bouanga and David Martinez, that's why we should talk a little about this championship. Let's remember that in Los Angeles Football Club, there's a player like Hugh Minson, which ends up giving this MLS team an extra level of prestige. Although for me, I think Nashville is one of the favorites. It seems to me that Nashville is the big favorite to win this title. It seems to me that in retrospect, and just to wrap up this video about the semifinals, Toluca faces Los Angeles on one side of the bracket. Both teams may not be at their best. They haven't been at their best lately, but we see Los Angeles there, solid in their conference, holding third place. Meanwhile, Toluca is basically trying to stay in the playoff zone, not even fighting for the top spots on the table. So, even though they have the top scorer of the tournament, I think it's very likely, but I think we have a high chance that the final of the tournament, that the final of the Concacaf Champions Cup could be an All-American final with two MLS teams. I think the stronger of the two Mexican teams for this semi-final match is Tigres. It's Tigres because of Tigres' recent history and what their squad represents. And also because they're going to face a Nashville team that, unlike Los Angeles, I think is going to have a much tougher time. Tigres has experience in this competition. They've won it, of course, and I think that could tip the scales a bit more. But as of today, I see Nashville as the favorite. That's how the semifinals are set up, these CONCACAF Champions semifinals, where starting from these matches, we'll be looking for what will come next. Nothing more and nothing less than the final matchups. Who will end up making up the matchup for the grand final of this continental tournament? Which, of course, we remember that it no longer gives that spot for the Club World Cup, because the Club World Cup as it was conceived no longer exists. But it does give you a ticket to that America's Challenge, where, for example, a year ago, Pachuca ended up beating Botafogo. Also a match against Flamengo, where the Mexican team ended up losing. Another Mexican team, not Pachuca, but the last champion of the CONCACAF Champions Cup. But that's it for this video about the semifinals of the CONCACAF Champions Cup. It will have to be decided between Mexican and American teams, Toluca against Los Angeles, and of course, then we'll have Nashville against Toluca, and we'll see who makes it to the final. I think we have a chance to get an All-American final, although I believe that Tigres, among the Mexican teams, is the one with the best chance to make it to the big final. That's it for this video. We invite you to leave a like, leave your comment, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next breakdown here on Falso 9 TV. See you next time. Bye-bye.